Coming up on College Press Box,
Texas looked to be in good shape before facing BYU this weekend.
Texas soccer and volleyball teams took some wins this past weekend, considering both of them undefeated.
And we will take a look at some Longhorns in the NFL.
All this and more on College Press Box. Good evening and welcome to this edition of College Press Box. I am your host, Julien Owens, and with me in the studio tonight is Zach Head. Zach, before we start talking about the horrible loss Texas took, what was your highlight of this weekend?
You know, the NFL is back, and just as importantly, so is fantasy football.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. As I mentioned before, Texas took a devastating loss against BYU the second year in a row. Zach, let's ask, how do you think about this game and how do you feel about the Longhorns going forward?
You know, Charlie Strong said it. He said the team didn't look prepared coming in, and that was a team that looked like they thought they were going to lose. They lost 3 starters on the offensive line as well as David Ash. So the offense really just didn't have it going. On the plus side, the defense looked solid in the first half, only giving up 6 points. And after effectively shutting out North Texas in the first game, other than the offensive blunder, the offense really shows some hope to being really the foundation for the team going forward.
It's hopeful. Hopefully it will be. This past Saturday, Texas took on the BYU Cougars in hopes of getting revenge of the loss they received last year. Let's go to DKR for the highlights. All right, Tyrone Swoops is making his first college career start as a quarterback with the injured David Ash. First quarter, 0-0. Tyrone Swoops will throw it to none other than John Harris for a 9-yard gain. Next play later, Tyrone Swoops will go and then throw it to John Harris again for 14 yards, and it's just going, and they're already in BYU territory. Things looking good. Tyrone Swoops looks to the pocket, he sweeps over, and he runs to the sideline, and he goes going to get, sniped a couple of yards, and that will be it for Texas drive. However, Taysom Hill, as you can see, is weaving through the defense. He goes in and gets a 7-yard gain from that. Later on in the third quarter, he scores 6-0. Taysom Hill weaves through the defense. He hurdles over a defender to get into the end zone. BYU is now up 13-0. Still in the third quarter, BYU will be up 13-0. Taysom will throw the ball, but Jordan Leslie will get the magnificent catch, 27 yards. 2 plays later, Hill will give it to his hefty running back, Adam Hine, and had him stiff arms the defender to get into the end zone, and the score will now be 20-0. Late in the third, now Texas is down 34-0. Tyrone throws it to, again, John Harris, weaves through the defense, goes in, jumps over a defender to get into the end zone, and now it is 34-7 with BYU leading. Texas is trying to get a comeback into it. However, though, in the next Texas drive that they get, Tyrone would eventually throw the interception to Michael Elisa, and that would be the end of the game. Texas would lose 41-7.
We now take you out to the UT-BYU game as reported by College Press Box's Peter Splendorio.
Once again, BYU dominated Texas on both sides of the ball. The Longhorns did little right in Saturday's 41-7 loss to the Cougars, leaving the coaches and players visibly upset.
I called the team up and I told them, I said, we're not ready to play. Our focus in here, we're going to play a really good football team, and we're going to get embarrassed if we don't watch out. And that's what ended up happening today.
We didn't come out and play the way we should have played. And, with a team like this, they're going to continue to grind the ball all game. You just got to continue to bounce back.
For the second straight season, BYU quarterback Taysom Hill was at the forefront of the offensive attack. After rushing for 259 yards against the Longhorns last season, he picked up 99 yards and 3 scores on the ground against Texas this year.
Allowed the quarterback to think we went into this game stand that we were going to stop the quarterback from running the football. And we did not allow it to happen. Third quarter to give up 28 points, you can't do it and we think you're going to play great defense. It would never happen.
Like I said, we just been tackling. We were reaching and grabbing instead of running through the game. And that's what tackling is all about. You finish means you take one more step.
Now, the Longhorns know they must make major changes before next week's game against number 12 UCLA.
Continue just to grind and do our job, man. That's not, we just got to go out and play defense. That's what we called upon to do, and we got to go do it, and we just execute.
Peter Splendorio, College Press Box.
Now in the studio with us is College Press Box's Reese Miller. Reese, how are you doing tonight?
Well, it's a rough weekend for all of us, but I'm happy to be here with you guys this evening.
It's been a rough week for everybody. Well, let's start with the topics that we're gonna go on. First one is Taysom Hill. How was Taysom Hill so great against the Texas defense?
Well, you know, he's a shifty guy. He's a big player at 6'3", just over 200 pounds. But, I mean, what impressed me is his absolute speed. Every time he got out in open space, he outran the entire Texas defense. And we knew coming into this game for Texas, they were going to have to really make him one-dimensional. They didn't do that. He was able to throw it in the air and have success on the ground game as well. Taysom Hill, overall great performance. I'm not going to throw him in the Heisman contenders just yet, but Texas did their best to try to make him look like he was a Heisman hopeful.
All right, now our next topic will be the Texas offense. As we all talked about it, Texas offense struggled throughout the whole game, and they only scored late in the third. Why were they so ineffective at moving the ball?
Well, to me, Texas offense, we knew coming into this year, would start with their running game, with the two-headed attack of Jonathan Gray and Malcolm Brown. Combined, those two players averaged 2.6 yards per carry, and for a guy making his first start in Tyrone Swoops, he needs that support. He needs to be able to get to play action. He needs to be able to rely on that running game like Texas offense. That's what they want to do. They want to pound the rock really every single down. They weren't able to do that on Saturday, and I attribute most of that to an inexperienced offensive line. Only 5 starts combined coming into this ball game, and I mean, they were absolutely manhandled, especially in the running game. Also, I would love to see a little bit more aggressive play calling for Tyrone Swoops, let him air it out just a little bit. But overall, just a real struggle, and that starts with the running game. The Texas offense is going to have to fix that moving forward.
All right. Now let's talk about some improvements. What do you think that Texas needs to improve on as they go and face this very tough upcoming schedule they have this season?
Well, there's a couple things that stick out in my mind. For one thing, Joe Wickline is supposed to be one of the best offensive line coaches really in all of college football, and he's got his work cut out for him with this group. They were decent in pass coverage, but like I said, they were absolutely manhandled in the run game. And that's where Texas offense really starts. We saw last year when they went on their 6-game winning streak in the Big 12, it was hand the ball off to Malcolm Brown and Jonathan Gray almost every down. So that's where it really starts for Texas. And defensively, I think they still have some major questions at linebacker. I was not impressed by the way this group played Saturday. I will say Malcolm Brown was an absolute monster defensive tackle, but the rest of the defensive line looked pretty average against an okay BYU offensive line. Yes, they did get 6 sacks, but they're still giving up 41 points, 28 in that third quarter. I mean, that's absolutely inexcusable. And it's going to be a rough road. 3 top 11 teams in the next 4 games for Texas. I mean, they could be easily looking up at a 2-4 start with a rough road ahead.
I mean, just to piggyback off what Reese said, this is a team that obviously relies on its defense a lot, and it wore down in the second half against BYU. And so this is a team that needs to get the running game going and just figure out a way to stay on the field longer so that the defense has a little more time to rest.
Okay. Now let's talk about suspensions. Everybody knows that Coach Strong has been very famous for, suspending a lot of players and even dismissing one. And this week, he already suspended 2 more players, and another one was dismissed entirely. What kind of impact does this have on Texas, and do you agree with these suspensions?
Well, it has a major impact on Texas. I mean, you've seen one of their top wide receivers from last year go. You've seen what would have been their starting safety from last year go. That would be Josh Turner. Kendall Sanders gone. We know about that. But this past week, I mean, that really hurts. Kennedy Estelle, along with Desmond Harrison, were supposed to be your 2 outside tackles. You lose them for I view that you're going to lose them for the entire season because they broke one of Charlie Strong's core values. You lost Dominic Espinoza, your center, probably for the year for Texas. So this is going to be a real struggle for offensive line that had questions already coming into the year. Now those questions are really answered. That this group is going to struggle. It's going to be a struggle going forward. Do I agree with the suspensions? Absolutely. It's about a culture change. And right now Texas is still that soft football team that if you hit them in the mouth, they're going to roll over. Just like we've seen the last 4 years under Mac Brown, that culture is still here on the 40 acres. And Charlie Strong is doing his absolute best to change it. He's not there yet. But suspensions, I mean, if guys are going to break the core values, if they're not going to be the leaders that you need them to be, absolutely I agree with the suspensions 100%. And Charlie Strong is on his way to the culture change and the physical team that I think he really wants to envision here on 40 acres.
Okay. All right, well, thank you so much, Reese. We'll see you back in just a few moments, back in the studio with more football talk. Well, coming up on College Press Box, we'll talk about some Texas soccer and volleyball this past weekend, and look ahead at the Big 12 championship games this past weekend. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to College Press Box, where we have some soccer and volleyball to discuss. Texas volleyball played number 11 University of Florida last Saturday in a matchup of two top 15 teams. The Longhorns came out strong in the first set, winning 24-16. The Gators then managed to keep it close, splitting the next two sets. Texas controlled the final set throughout to come away with a 3-1 victory. The Longhorn victory came on the strength of sophomore Chiaka Abogu, who finished with 11 kills and 9 blocks, and freshman Kat McCoy, who finished with 20 digs. Overall, the Longhorns rode their defense to the win, outblocking the Gators 16-5. Texas' next game comes against number 23 Arizona on Friday, September 12th.
This past Friday night, the Texas soccer team rallied 6 goals to win the shutout against Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Texas hasn't scored 6 times in a single match since September of 2007 against University of Texas at San Antonio. Freshman forward Olivia Brooks scored 2 goals, one around the 33-minute mark of the first half and one in the mid to late second half, and a few assists to help with the Longhorns win, putting her with a great start of the season. Senior defender Brooke Gilbert, sophomore forward Jasmine Hart, and junior midfielder Leslie Meyer also scored goals in this game, but also with a little help of the opposition to get the final goal of the night.
The Longhorns also finished with an exciting 2-0 win against Montana on Sunday. Scoring on a penalty kick by senior Brooke Gilbert and a 90th minute goal by junior Chantel Campbell, UT continued its early season dominance, going unbeaten through the first 6 games, for only the second time in program history. The Longhorns came out aggressive after halftime, controlling the second half by outshooting the Grizzlies 14-1. The team continues to be led by Abby Smith, who posted her 3rd shutout of the season and her 2nd in a row. The Longhorns travel to Tampa Friday, September 12th, to take on Central Florida at the University of South Florida Soccer Classic.
All right, as you can see, Zach, we have a great Texas women team that's going off on a great start this season. Both of them are undefeated and looks to have a great season. But Zach, let's get right into it. How do you feel about both of these teams going on towards this year? Let's first start with soccer.
Well, with soccer, I think they have a really balanced scoring attack. This is a team that can rely on a lot of players to score goals. They've obviously started well, haven't lost yet. But really, I see the team as being led by Abby Smith. She's had 3 shutouts, and that's been half of their games. And she's just really taken it upon herself to lead the team so far.
And I have to agree with you on that. Abby Smith is looking very great. She's looking a little better than she did last year. This whole team overall has a little veteran position on them, so it looks really good. Also, I have to keep an eye on Olivia Brooke. She just came in as a freshman, as we talked about, and she's one of the best scorers right now for the team. She's scoring more than any other freshman soccer player did in program history. So with those two going in at it with the team that's a little bit more seasoned than they were last year, I think this team can really make a run to the game.
Definitely.
And now, let's go to volleyball. How do you feel about the volleyball team?
I mean, the volleyball team, they've looked great so far. Something definitely to be said, Chiaka Abogu was named the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week for this last week. And so you've really seen players like her and then Kat McCoy, and they've stepped up and they've filled in some of the positions that were left open after some of the seniors graduated. This is a team that's really mixed some senior leadership, some upperclassmen that are juniors, as well as young talent, and they've really looked to be finding some chemistry.
And I would just have to agree with you on that one. I felt like with Sarah Palmer leaving, I didn't think the team would have enough what it takes to basically have somebody who's going to help them with assists, get them the rhythm going that they, like Sarah did with the volleyball team. But Chiaka and Kat just looks phenomenal this weekend.
Definitely.
They really look good. The veteran players are looking amazing. It's just this team looks a lot younger, like what I saw in the 2012-2013 season when they went to the national championship run. It looks really good right now. I just have to wait till they really play some more top 25 opponents, and when Big 12 comes around. Once those two come out, I will happily know that they can make a playoff run.
Definitely. Big 12 is whenever it'll all come to light.
Absolutely. When we come back, our analyst Reese Miller will be returning to talk about what's happening around the Big 12, as well as the preview of the UCLA-UT game. Stay tuned. Welcome back to College Press Box. Back in the studio with us is Reese Miller. Reese, let's start talking about some Big 12 games and the UCLA games this past weekend. Let's start with Baylor. Baylor scored 70 points between Northwestern State without Bryce Petty. What does this say about the Bears, and are they even primed for the playoff run this later season?
Well, one thing it says about the Baylor Bears is that it doesn't matter who you throw in our Browl system. We saw RG3, now with Bryce Petty, now Seth Russell put up 438 yards and 5 touchdowns in the first half alone. Baylor ended up putting over 700 yards of total offense. Now, yes, it is an FCS school, but either way, that's incredibly impressive. Jock Linwood was outstanding with over 100 yards. And Katie Cannon, the kid had 6 catches, 223 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's just incredible, especially when Baylor didn't have their top 3 wideouts going into that ballgame. So they're a little banged up right now. Got to be concerned about Bryce Petty, but man, if that guy's there, I was a little bit concerned about their secondary coming into the year. They appear to have fixed that problem with a couple hot new recruits coming into this season. And absolutely, if Bryce Petty's healthy, I would absolutely not count Baylor out of playoff push.
Hopefully we can stop. Well, Texas can stop them against Baylor, but we'll see as the season continues. Now let's talk about Oklahoma. Oklahoma destroyed Tulsa 52-7 this past Saturday, and now they went up to the AP polls to number 4. What do you think about this OU team? Are they overrated, or are they the team that people need to watch out for?
Coming into the season, preseason ranked number 4, I definitely thought Oklahoma was underrated. You got Trevor Knight, who really only had the one great game in the Sugar Bowl. 5 starts last year, didn't finish 2 of them because of injury, so I definitely had some durability questions about Trevor Knight, but man, the kid has set the world on fire so far this season. They've got a pretty good 2-headed running back combination with Keith Ford and Alex Ross. Both of those guys went over 100 yards, and Sterling Shepard, man, that guy once again went over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns against Tulsa, which is a pretty good football team there, typically always in contention for bowl victories. Oklahoma is a really, really good football team. Just imagine if they had their leading tackler from last year. Just imagine if they had Doro Green Beckham. Then you really have to watch out for Oklahoma. But either way, this is a team that's going to give Texas some real trouble down the line, and a team right now that maybe only Baylor can really knock off. So I think an undefeated Oklahoma team would absolutely get into the playoff push as well.
Okay, then. All right, now let's talk about UCLA. UCLA knocked off Memphis 42-35 Saturday, and now they are 2-0. But do you think this Bruins team is impressive at all?
Well, the Bruins are interesting because coming into the year, they sort of, ranked number 7 in the AP preseason poll. A lot of people had them as their Cinderella team, and they have been absolutely anything but impressive so far. 7-point victories over Virginia, and last week, once again, just another 7-point victory against a Memphis team who's quite frankly not very good. Scored their most points against an FBS school, another FBS school in a Power 5 conference in the last 5 years. So in the first game, the defense looked really good, scoring 3 defensive touchdowns. Brett Hundley struggled. Last week, Brett Hundley, threw 2 interception return for touchdowns, but the defense, didn't look that good either. So I'm very concerned, as you should be if you're a UCLA Bruins fan, about the way this team's performed so far. This is a team that does not look ready for me. Maybe the hype is getting to them just a little bit. Do I think they give Texas some trouble? Absolutely I do. But do I think they're going to be able to maybe win the Pac-12? Absolutely not. Not at this point. You can't make that judgment because of just how sloppy they've looked against 2 subpar teams.
Yeah, I have to say, this team looks like the annual overrated team. They absolutely have talent. They have it on both sides with Miles Jack and Brett Hundley, but it hasn't looked good for them so far.
All right, then. Now let's talk about Texas and the high-power offenses that they will have to face. Texas will face 3 top 11 teams in the next 4 games. All of them offenses considered explosive. How do you think the Texas will handle these upcoming matchups?
Well, it's kind of hard to make that judgment at this moment because, Texas shut out effectively on defense the North Texas team that put up 38 points on SMU last week, but at the same time gave up 41 points to a BYU team who's quite frankly not that talented offensively outside of Taysom Hill and Jamal Williams. So you take a look, these are all teams that are better offensively in my mind. UCLA, Baylor, Oklahoma, all better than BYU, who Texas laid down 41 points to this past weekend. And another real problem that all these teams present, they've all got mobile quarterbacks. We saw it last year. Texas couldn't handle mobile quarterbacks. Taysom Hill ran all over the Texas D this past weekend, so I think another severe problem for Texas. I mean, they could easily be staring up at a 2-4 start and only 2 games in or 3 games into the Big 12 schedule. I mean, Texas could be scratching scratching, even for bowl eligibility. It's crazy how this team's outlook has changed that fast, but right now that's the reality.
All right, and finally, we're going to go straight into your preview, or what do you think this is going to happen in this week against UCLA for Texas?
Right, well, my three keys, number one has got to be the offensive line. I mean, this offensive line cannot get manhandled by a pretty good UCLA defense once again. They're going to have to be able to run the football, take some of that pressure off Tyron Swoops. Only 2.6 yards per carry combined between those two. Malcolm Brown and Jonathan Gray last week. That's absolutely not going to cut it against the UCLA team. And they're going to have to open up the playbook a little bit for Tyron Swoops. He only threw one pass over 15 yards. Last week, the kid's got a big time arm. We saw it in the spring game. We saw it last year in the Alamo Bowl, that bomb to Mike Davis. You better remember that. They're going to have to open up the playbook for Tyron Swoops here just a little bit, get him going, get him rolling out of the pocket, because Texas is going to have to put up points. I don't see the Texas defense holding UCLA under 30 points. I mean, and that's a low ball in it right there. So I think it is going to be a struggle for Texas. But another thing, defensively, is contained Brett Hundley. This guy is bigger. He's a better passer. And to me, he's a little bit more mobile than Taysom Hill. We saw what Taysom Hill did. He's a little bit less shifty, but he's got more top-end speed, and he's a better passer overall. It's going to be a struggle for Texas overall in my mind.
Well, hopefully they'll get some things situated before they play UCLA this Saturday. But thank you so much, Reese, for coming in the studio for us, and we hope to see you again.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
When we come back, we'll talk about the Longhorns in the NFL and what's happening in this week in Longhorn sports. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to College Press Box. Several Longhorns kicked off the NFL season this past weekend, including notables running back Jamal Charles, safeties Kenny Vaccaro and Earl Thomas, defensive ends Lamar Houston and Brian Arakpo, and defensive tackle Henry Melton. Unfortunately, inside linebacker Derek Johnson's season is over as he tore his Achilles.
Okay, and now we'll take a look at this week in Longhorn sports. Well, this Friday through Sunday, men's golf will be at the OFCC Fighting Illinois Invitational. Men's tennis will be at the Racket Club Collegiate Invitational, and women's tennis will be at the Under Armour Kickoff. Also on Friday, September 12th, soccer will be playing against Central Florida here at Austin at 3:30. You can catch that on Longhorn Network. And volleyball will be playing against Arizona. You can catch them also at 7 p.m. Longhorn Network.
On Saturday, September 13th, volleyball will be playing Central Florida at 12 p.m. on Longhorn Network. They will also be playing Florida A&M at 3 p.m. on Longhorn Network as well. Football will be playing, UT will be playing UCLA at 7 p.m. on Fox. And then on Sunday, September 14th, soccer will be at South Florida at 10:30 p.m.
All right, Zach, before we go off, what is your score prediction for this game against UCLA?
You know, unfortunately, I think UCLA is, at this point, a far better football team than UT. So I'm going to have to say UT keeps it a little bit competitive, but loses 37-27.
You give them that much. Unfortunately, I don't think Texas defense will be able to stop the UCLA offense, and the offense will not be able to score that many points. So I give UCLA beating Texas 35-14.
Yeah, unfortunately, that seems like a reality.
Unfortunately. Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you for joining us tonight. You can always catch us here every Monday night at 9:30. Then you can follow us on Twitter to get the latest in Longhorn sports at College Press Box. You can also follow our sister show, College Crossfire, and watch them at Wednesday nights at 9:30 p.m. You'll find the greatest sports debates on 40 acres. You can follow them on Twitter at College X5. From all of us in the studio, from Mass Control, thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight. Have a great one.
Same time shine. For all the dope boys pushing on the grind. For all the dope girls.